I'm Nan McKay. Welcome to Trailblazers Impact Podcast with inspiring stories of women who created new paths for other women to follow. Our website is trailblazersimpact.com, and you can contact us at hello@trailblazersimpact.com.
Hello, this is Nan McKay, and I would like to introduce you today to Robin Kardon, who is an author of a really interesting book called Fly Girl that you can purchase right directly from our site. Let's start out, Robin, with a question that takes you back a bit. And the question is, how did your early life affect who you are today?
First of all, Nan, thank you very much for inviting me to be on the Trailblazers Impact Podcast. It's very exciting. I would say that my early life influenced me profoundly. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in New York City, in Queens, and was raised by a single mother, which during that time was in 1963 when my parents were divorced. It was very unusual to come from a divorced family. My mother moved us into her parents' house where we lived with my maternal grandparents and their developmentally disabled daughter, my mother's sister. My grandparents had a terrible marriage. The environment was very unsafe and unsettling. There was a lot of arguing, a lot of back and forth, emotionally abusive language back and forth between all the adults. And there was a terrible negative energy in the house. So what I learned at an early age was that, unfortunately, one way to get attention was to scream and shout and throw yourself around. Sadly, that was a template I followed through adolescence into adulthood. What, of course, I didn't realize was that manner of being in the world did attract attention, but it isn't the type of attention that is satisfying or that serves you.
Because of the way you grew up, did you feel comfortable in getting along with other people?
Not really. My mother was very narcissistic and may or may not have suffered from some undiagnosed mental illness, along with her sister, who, as I said, was developmentally disabled. Her behavior was to be a backstabber, be mean to people, be demanding, be spoiled, yell and scream to get what she wanted. And that's what I learned. And no, I would not say it served me well. If I was not getting the attention I wanted in an environment, I would behave badly and I would get attention. But again, and I didn't realize it at the time, when your parents are not paying attention to you, you think any attention is good. But that's just not the truth. I can see that now, but I couldn't, of course, see it then.
Did your grandparents live in the house with you?
Yes, they did.
Okay. So it was your grandparents who didn't get along, your parents who didn't get along, and then you were in the middle of it.
My brother and I, my younger brother and I were in the middle of it. That's where we were placed because we had nowhere else to go when my parents were divorced. Now, my father disappeared. We were living in New York at the time, which is where I'm from, and he moved back to California, where his parents were, my paternal grandparents, who I never knew. And we barely saw him or heard from him.
So tell me a little bit about your career background. You started in which business?
I graduated from college and then went immediately to law school. After I graduated from law school, I took the bar exam and became an attorney in Washington, D.C., working for a small law firm as a litigator, so doing quite a bit of trial work. And did that for 3.5 years before I moved to Chicago and got another litigation job. I ended up working for 2 firms in Chicago before I abandoned legal practice and moved on to my next career.
When in all this era did you start the writing?
I have always written. As a matter of fact, when I was a child, it was widely believed that I would be a writer. When I was at NYU as an undergrad, I majored in journalism. And it was expected that when I graduated from college, I would try and find a job as a reporter or an intern at a magazine or newspaper. And of course, growing up in New York City and being exposed to it and the greatest, being exposed, especially at the time, to the greatest journalism in the world. We all wanted to be foreign correspondents for the New York Times or the Washington Post. But I didn't realize that it was a hard career. You actually had to go out and start at the bottom and make very little money and live very judiciously. So my best friend had applied to law school, and I thought, what the heck? I'll do that too. I applied to the same law schools that she did. We both got in together, and we both went to American University, Washington College of Law down in Washington, D.C.
After having read your book and enjoyed it,
thank you.
There must be some background working someplace in the airlines. Was it a pilot?
I had a 12-year career as a professional pilot, working both as a corporate pilot and airline pilot. I have flown the shiny corporate jets that I talk about in Fly Girl. The largest airplane I've flown was in airline services, the Boeing 737-800.
So I'm trying to figure out, you've got on this end, you've got your law firm that you've been working for. On this end, you've got your writer, and in the middle is the airlines. Is that right?
That is correct. My 12-year flying career was right after I decided to leave the practice of law. I trained as a civilian pilot. I was not in the military, so I had to pay for my training, 100% for my training, and take private lessons. And I did that while I was a full-time attorney. So during the week, I would work my 12, 14-hour days, and then I would come home and study. And on every weekend, I went to the airport.
How did you get the bug originally to fly?
Well, since you read my book, I'm sure you'll remember the scene where young Triss is taken to the big city airport by her grandfather and runs through the doors and sticks her nose up against the glass, against the bullseye tip of a Boeing 747 in TWA colors. That was me. We were not a wealthy family. We didn't have a lot of money. So on the weekends, my grandfather would take my brother and I out to do things that were free. And back in the day, you could walk right into the airport and walk right up to the gate. There was no post 9/11 security. And that's what we did. He would take us to John F. Kennedy International Airport. And I would run up to the glass and stare out at the airplanes. When I was a kid, I told my mother that I wanted to be an astronaut. And she said, women don't do that. And at the time, they didn't.
True.
I don't think that's how she meant it. I think she wanted me to be in a more traditional career. Where I grew up, these were the choices: doctor, lawyer, teacher. That's what I chose. I chose lawyer. But it was always in the back of my mind that I enjoyed flying. I enjoyed flight. I was fascinated. We just celebrated the 50th anniversary of the first moon landing. I was fascinated by all those launches. If I stand outside my home, in front of my home, and I look to the south, I can see the airplanes on final approach to San Diego Lindbergh International. I've flown that very approach many, many, many times.
There's a fair amount of discrimination against women that went on in that particular career. Tell me a little bit about that.
The joke used to be that if you're flying with someone you've never flown before as a first officer, and you walk into the cockpit, if you're a man, the captain is going to immediately wonder, is he fun on the overnight? If you're a woman, they're going to immediately wonder, can she fly? It is how people were traditionally wired. I would also add, Nan, that at the time I was flying professionally, only 7% of all professional working commercial pilots were women. Believe it or not, that percentage is exactly the same today.
Really?
It's a tough business for women to be in. And your career was to a large extent at the mercy of the people that you were flying with. If they were progressive, if they didn't look at female pilots as scans, if they believed that if you were there, you had every right to be there, then your career would be ascendant. If they didn't, you would have trouble. I entered the industry right after a lot of the lawsuits against airlines for discriminating against women required them to hire certain percentages. So there was a great deal of bad feeling against women in the industry. And the general consensus among some people was that if I got the job, that means their buddy who was a better pilot, or maybe a military veteran, or maybe had more flight hours, or who deserved it more for some reason, didn't get it. That it was a zero-sum game. And that was tough to live. That was tough to live up to, I have to say.
I imagine it was. And that does come through in your book. Dieter comes to my mind as a character who certainly was like, oh God, what's this woman doing here? And is there any way I can get rid of her? But boy, the turnaround, you sure surprised me in that book as we got toward the end of it. And I really hope people can read this because it is a great story. I didn't expect some of that ending on two of the characters. And it was just marvelous to be able to read it and go, oh, because you're sitting there going, I know how this is going to end. I really don't want this to end this way. I did what you did, and I won't spoil it for everybody else. But it's just like, wow, what a great ending.
Thank you very much for that. I will tell you that that's one of the reasons, the ending was one of the reasons I decided to write a novel instead of a memoir, because in real life, the ending was much different. And I felt that writing this book, which had taken me 25 years to complete, was a way for me to rewrite the story. I wanted people to get an authentic peek at what it was like to be a woman in that world and what success looked like. In so many books, success for the strong female protagonist comes along with fireworks and cymbals crashing and that the NFL, what I always call the NFL touchdown music. But in the real world, you can have a quieter success and still be successful. That has always been the way I've pursued success. It didn't have to come with a marching band or a big banner headline or celebrity. It could be one person's internal battle being won. That's what I was thinking when I wrote Fly Girl.
And did you feel at the end of your airline career that you had success?
No, not really. A few things conspired to leave me very unsatisfied at the end of that career. I've made peace with it, but I could have been more successful. I could have made different choices, and I didn't. And of course, probably the most major event that helped end my flying career was 9/11. I was about to say the timing of that was terrible. I don't know that there would ever have been a good time for that. I always say, people say, what was the worst day of your life? And that's the day I pick, because it not only set in motion a series of events that ended my airline career, but it destroyed so many lives of people that lived, not just the people who perished, but of people that lived. I'm asked all the time whether I think there will be another attack like 9/11. And I always say, how could they possibly top it? How could they do, more devastating? We're still feeling the repercussions. I lost my job almost immediately. I was furloughed and I was angry and bitter. And I took another job, which I entered angry and bitter. And needless to say, it did not go well. And then I got my final job, which I thought, okay, this will be much better. But I wasn't better. Was I suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder? Maybe. But for a long time after 9/11, I just was not myself. I wasn't right. I ended up walking away from the airlines feeling that I had not honored myself and the career as well as I would have liked to. Was I a competent pilot? Always, 100%. No accidents, no incidents. I still have tons of friends in the industry, but I wasn't feeling it. I did not appreciate what I had. And so I walked away from it. But the good news there, and there always is, the career I entered after that as a legal executive recruiter, I have helped thousands, and I mean thousands, of people in their careers, giving them advice, helping them pursue opportunities, teaching them, which my expertise, which is interview skills, teaching them interview skills, which is a topic I speak on all the time, how to be more confident in the room, how to be more confident people, how to look at their backgrounds, see success where they might not otherwise see it. And in a way, that was a true blessing because I have left my mark on so many people. In my mind, I used to think, well, if I can help just one, as Ralph Waldo Emerson said in his famous quote, if you can leave the world better by an improved social condition, etc., or if one person breathes easier because you have lived, that is the meaning of success. And I do believe that. I've always had some regrets about the way my airline career ended, but I also know that I moved on to truly serve other people. That means a lot to me.
This is probably a real naive question, but why were you furloughed after 9/11?
Okay, no, it isn't. It's an excellent question. In the airlines, they're all unionized, and seniority is date of hire, regardless of your experience. So I had left a job where I had a ton of seniority and started a new job where I went to the bottom of the seniority list on January 1st, 2001. How could I have known? All my friends at the job I left kept their jobs because they had so much seniority. And I was right at the bottom of the list at my new job. I was one of the first people let go.
And I didn't realize, I didn't connect anything on that. Have you had some times in your life where you just felt, I can't do this?
I feel that way these days. I'm writing my second book, so I feel that way every day. I was just revising a chapter before we started talking, and I thought, well, this must be how it feels to think I can't do this. So, yeah, of course. What I've learned as I've gotten older is that thought in my mind is really me asking myself, do you want to do this? This is going to take a lot of work. You know what it's going to take. Are you willing to do it? Because if you're not, step off. There has never been a time where I've accomplished anything half-assed. Never. I rarely have failed to achieve what I've wanted when I've been truly committed to it.
What motivates you? What makes you get up in the morning?
I have a cat and 4 dogs. 2 of them are foster dogs I have to take care of, so they won't let me sleep too long. But to seriously answer your question, for me, Nan, it was and always will be achievement. Now, I suppose you could say that it is the never-ending quest to get love from a parent who didn't love you. Or to get attention from a parent who ignored you or was not interested in you, which would describe, unfortunately, my mom. But I like to know that I can still do it. I like to set goals for myself and achieve them. And that's what gets me up in the morning, whether it's playing a better tennis match or writing a better chapter, which is something I'm working on right now to try and bring my reader a little bit closer into the environment that I'm writing about right now. If I can do that, then that's the thing that keeps me going.
Let's talk about that a minute, because I've talked to several writers. I always wonder, how do you formulate the story? Is it something where you go from start to finish? Do you develop characters as they go along? What's your method?
It's interesting you should bring that up. For Fly Girl, all of the characters were developed way back in the 90s when I was going through some of the things that my main character was going through. And in fact, when the book was published 25 years later, every single character, except for one, the main character, had the same name I had given them 25 years ago. One of the reasons it took so long for me to finish the book was that there is a process to writing a novel, and I didn't know it, so I had to learn it. And so in 2015, I entered a certificate program offered by a local group here, a local nonprofit called San Diego Writers, Inc. And the pitch for the certificate program was, we will teach you all of the steps to write a novel. And they did. The course was taught by a 13-book traditionally published author who's a superb writer, and she knows what she's doing. At the end of it, I had a first draft. And now, having learned that, it took me, I always joke and say, 20 years to write the first draft. My second book, it took 6 weeks because I had been formulating the plot generally in my mind, and I knew the sequence things needed to happen in because I had learned them.
Amazon seems to make it easier and easier to self-publish. Did you self-publish through them, or how does that work today?
I am published through Acorn Publishing. What Acorn Publishing is, I like to call it assisted self-publishing. Yes, it is self-publishing, but it's like self-publishing with a bullet. I was walked through the process, which is very complicated, by the 2 people who own the business. And they made it, I'm not going to say easier because it was a ridiculous amount of work, but at least I had a good idea, better idea what to expect. When people say self-publishing, a lot of times eyes start to roll. The thinking is, you could put anything on paper. It doesn't have to be grammatical. It doesn't have to be spelled right. It doesn't have to be in the correct format, and you could self-publish it on Amazon because that is true. You can upload a document to Amazon and they'll format it and they'll put a cover on it and you can sell it. I refused to have my name on something like that. I had it edited to within an inch of its life, and then copy edited, and then content edited, and then rewritten again. If you recall in the acknowledgments, the first sentence of the acknowledgments, I wrote this book at least 30 times, and I did. I could have put out something, could have put out anything, but I would not put my name on something I was not proud of. I am very proud of it. They give you a timeline within which things should be happening in order to hit the market with the best results. They do not provide traditional distribution channels. So for example, if you publish a book through Scrivener or St. Martin's, first of all, they'll pay you in advance. Your royalties will be teeny tiny, and you won't get any royalties until they have, quote, earned back their advance. But their distribution channels will put you in bookstores, libraries, you name it. For me, I had to front the cost of the process, and that's everything. Copy editing, formatting, uploading, the cover, which I'm very proud of, by the way. But all the royalties are mine. I did not get an advance, but anything I earn off the book, 100% is mine. I paid a consulting fee to Acorn, and they walked me through the process and let me put their imprint on my book. And it was a curated selection. Acorn doesn't take everything that walks in the door. They are very heavily curated. So I was proud when they agreed to take my project.
What advice would you give to a budding author?
Be prepared to work harder than you could possibly imagine you will work, for the world not to necessarily welcome you with the crash of cymbals. And once again, the NFL touchdown music. It's a hard business, especially if you're a first-time author, especially if it's fiction, especially if it's like my book, mainstream commercial fiction. It's a very hard business. There's a ton of competition. You will be surprised at the positives you take out of it. I mean, I'm not going to lie, being a businesswoman, I was hoping for landslide sales, and that didn't happen. But what has pleased me almost as much, if not more, is the engagement with the readers. When readers talk about my book the way you have, and thank you, when they post positive reviews, when they tell me they can't wait to read the next chapter of my main character's life, the value of that is as extraordinary as you think it is.
Well, I wish you much success on your current book that you're writing, because I know that has to be a labor of love, because it must be difficult, but you did so well on your first book, and we will definitely encourage everybody to read it. I have read it, I loved it, and I think other people will too. So thank you so much for participating with us today.
Thank you, Nan. Thank you for the invitation. It's truly an honor to talk with you.
I hope you enjoyed listening to another story of the impact of trailblazers. Visit our website at trailblazersimpact.com and connect with us at hello@trailblazersimpact.com. And remember, you must learn a new way to think before you can master a new way to be.